All right, so we left it off where we can actually register, we can create new users, and they can log in and do all that. That's great. But what we want to do now is make sure that the email cannot be registered more than once. There are ways to go around doing this. You can use the username as being super unique, but I want the username and the email to be unique. I don't want them to have multiple of either. We're not going to be creating a custom user model, which there is a way to do that. If you want to learn how to do that, contact us, codingforentrepreneurs@gmail.com, and we'll point you in the right direction on how you can learn how to do that. So that's one thing, but what we're going to be doing is using this form to prevent both the username and email from being registered more than once. So it's going to be one username, one email, and that's it, right? So it's unique for an email, unique for a username for everybody. Okay, so right off the bat, what we do know is Django already has a form validation for username, or it's not actually a form validation, it's a field validation. So if I try and do jmitchell3 again and log in, it'll say this user already exists, and then password fields are required. Okay, so that's cool. That's one thing that we do want to note right off the bat. So now what we need to do is just make sure that this email address, that there's no other instances of it whatsoever, meaning there's 0 users with that name. So it's going to be very similar to clean username. So if I scroll down, I'm going to go ahead and copy clean username and paste it into our registration form. And of course, this time I'm going to call it clean email, and then it'll be email. And instead of doing this try statement, what we're going to do is get rid of this. And I'm going to just use a filter statement. So filter, and it's going to be email is equal to email. And then we're going to get the count. Okay, so what this is doing is it's getting the number of objects that are filtered to being email is equal to email. So that match this query basically. So if the count is not equal to 0, or it's greater than 0, so if user, let's say user count, let's call this variable user count, because it's not actually the user object, it's just a number here, because we're calling this right here at the end of it. And you can do this on any query set, you can get the count just like that. So if user count is greater than 0, then we're going to run an error saying this user has already been registered. This email has already been registered. Please reset your password. Okay, so that's essentially what we did. So if it's equal to 0, meaning equals to 0, if that's true, then we want to just return the email. So for us, outside of this if statement, we just return email. So that is fairly simple, right? We're filtering out all of the count. Let's actually see what the user count is so we can just look at it when we actually print it. It should say the appropriate number, but it's always good to just check these things just in case. So let's try this out. Going back into our form, we don't have to refresh at all. I'm going to do codingforentrepreneurs@gmail, password 123, log in. Looks like I needed to reset the server. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. All right, so as it's resetting, there it goes. Okay, now back into our form, and I'll do jmitch, and then codingforentrepreneurs@gmail, 123, hit login. This email's already been registered. Please check, and we should probably say please check and try again, not please reset your password. Please check and try again, or reset your password. How about that? Please check and try again or reset your password. Okay, great. So that's actually working. Now, if I changed it to like ABC, that's not a real email address, or at least it's not one that I control, and we do that, and then I hit login, and it looks like it worked. So let's go into our admin, log in as our super user, of course, users, and I have this user now of jmitch. Perfect. So that actually created it, and we've got our email address there. So let's log out and let's try and register another user. So accounts, register, and I'll call this user ABC, and we'll do ABC at Gmail one more time. Go ahead and log in. It's already been registered. Please reset your password. Looks like our new statement did not hold, and that's probably because I didn't save it. But we can also check our terminal to see, look at number 1, 0, 1. So those numbers are related to how many are actually in this count right here, right? Now, I do want to note that if you are familiar with Python, you could do user count equals to this, and then put len for length. You could do that, but it's actually a little bit stronger of a statement to say this, because this could take a long time. So if there's 1,000 users, this query will actually calculate a lot longer than this count, because this count is actually stored in the database, and it's a lot easier to access for Django. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to get rid of this user count, and then also in my view, I keep printing out is valid, so I'm going to get rid of that as well. And I'm also going to get rid of this new user first name. So I'm going to comment it out and just write a note that this is where you can do stuff with, the model form. So it's in between the form being submitted and being saved. It could happen. It happens, super fast, but it is in between there. Okay, so now what we would need to do is actually make this email field being required. Now, there's a couple ways we could go about doing it, but I'm going to do the straightforward and simplest way to do it, and that's just by defining email equals to forms.email field, and just like that. And we can change our label equals to email, or more specifically, your email. And that's it. That's how we could leave it. Or we could also remove this field here and then put email down here. So we could go user.email equals to self.cleaned data email. That would be another way to do it. Because once we actually run save, these are set, because that's how we set the password, right? So we actually removed the field from the model itself, or the model form itself, and then added 2 new fields called password1 and password2, and then we set the field based off of one of these fields. Where if we left it the other way, so I'm going to comment this out, if I left email in here, this field right here is actually rendered, and actually leave this commented out. This field right here is rendered because it's part of model form, and this is an actual field that's from the model, that's inherited from the model, and it's actually rendering the field that way. But if we add the email up here, this will basically overwrite what's there and allow us to show that this is now required. And this would be a way to set it again later if for some reason we wanted to remove this. Now, this is all we need to do. We don't actually need this down here, so I'm actually going to delete that. It's not necessary. Okay, so now it's required because this by default is required. We could change how this is required if we wanted to, but I'm going to leave it as required. And let's go ahead and test it out. So going into accounts, register, and ABC123 at Gmail, 123, 123 and 123, log in, and let's check out the admin, users. The email was saved. Okay, that's great, but we didn't actually test whether or not it's required. Just hit login, and it says all these different fields are required. Perfect. So now we have set it up to where our form takes in a brand new user. It has to be a brand new email as well. So brand new username and brand new email, and then it will save the email based off of that. And all, so we actually have it set up the way we want it to be. Now the next part of it would be actually sending a registration email, so like our verification of your email. So we could do it in a couple places. We could do it in this registration view, or we could do it in our form. So we could do it in here after the save, or we could also set up a signal, like what we've seen on user logged in, to make a signal for user created, which is actually what we're going to do. we're going to use user created signal, so that way when a user is created, it will send a signal basically saying, hey, a registration form has been filled out, please confirm your email address. And then we'll have to set up something to actually monitor whether or not their email has been confirmed. And all that stuff's going to be very similar to what we've seen with user Stripe, but it's just going to be slightly different. It's not a whole lot different, but slightly different. All right, so we will see you in the next one.